Right.
Yes. All
right. So that's the first step. And the second thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you a brief introduction about myself. All right. My name is Tamon Diodone. I live and I reside here in the United Arab Emirates, and I am the CEO and co-founder of Tadita Group Institute. All right. So we have brought this course to you to actually give you an insight of what AutoCAD is all about. Majority of you might have gone through this software, you have an idea, but there are some certain things which you don't know as far as it is concerned. All right, and you equally you equally accept with me that whatever we talk when we talk about engineering, architect, as far as your country is as far as Cameroon is concerned, what we actually do back home is totally different from um, it's totally different from what is actually happening in the developed countries. All right. So we've tried our possible best to bring out everything that is happening here. We've tried to summarize it. And an expert is going to be giving you an insight, is going to actually drill you as far as this particular program is concerned. And you're going to learn more, and actually, you're equally going to get information in respect to what is going to be coming up ahead as well. Right. So I live and reside here in the UAE. All right. I'm the co-founder and the CEO of Tadita Group Institute, and I'm equally a digital marketing expert. So what we actually do is we harness these skills, we harness this field, and we try our possible best to ensure that those who actually get these skills, those who understand what architecture or engineering is all about, we make sure that you have the knowledge that can actually help you to foster your career in other countries and equally pick up a very good job. And that's what we are going to be giving you today. So before we begin, I'm going to introduce Mr. Wahila Richi. All right, that is going to be your mentor for today. Mr. Wahila Richi is someone who has been in this industry for more than 8 years. All right, and he's equally a certified and an accredited engineer. All right, and has been certified by the London International Studies here in the United Arab Emirates. So I'm going to give the floor. But before I give the floor to Mr. Wahila Richi, I want to welcome each and every one of you once again to this training. I want to welcome you, Mr. Ayuk Valerie. I know it really takes a lot of sacrifice for you to keep whatever you are doing to be able to attend this session. All right. So we'll give you all the tap on the back, and we've said you're not going to regret whatever you're going to get from this session, and we are going to give you the best. So welcome. There are some names which some people, they don't actually have their names on their Zoom accounts. I'm going to recognize Mr. Rodrigue, Raphael, Eta, Nelson, Chanji Luis, Bu Tani, Limitless Boy, and Jerry, and Ayuk Valerie. I want to welcome you again and ensure that you guys should sit put and make sure you get everything we are going to give out to you today. This training is for 2 days. Today, you're going to get some insight, and tomorrow is going to be a blast. Tomorrow is going to be a really, really great scenario because we are going to be taking you to the real world. We are going to be explaining to you what is expected of you as an architect, what is expected of you as an engineer in the real world. So today, make sure you get what you can get, but try to follow the mentor or the tutor very well, because what he has for you, I'm not sure you can be able to get that same knowledge which you're going to get today. All right. So sit back and we are going to drill you, and you're going to actually enjoy this session. So I welcome you, Mr. Wahila Richi. I don't know if you're there. Can you just come in, and we are going to kick off with this program immediately. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tamon. Good evening, everyone. I am Mr. Awa, like Mr. Tamon has rightly said, and well, I'm a civil and structural engineer by profession and a BIM expert, and also the CEO of Hilotech Construction and co-founder of Tadita Institute. So, well, Tadita Institute is an institute where we try to drill entrepreneurs to bring you the kind of skills that you need to really survive and excel out there as an entrepreneur as a whole. And this program is actually part of that, and we are aiming at giving you the skills which you don't really know as far as AutoCAD is concerned, which are really needed for you to stand out, when you are carrying out your designs and all that. Okay, so please, I would just want to say, if you're in here, just always mute your mic, and we are going to give room for questions at the end of the session. So if you have the AutoCAD software, please, if you can turn it on in your system, that will be good. If you don't have it, just follow up. And at the end, we are going to provide you a recorded session of the program. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen now. Okay, just to confirm, I hope you are all seeing my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, thank you. All right. So again, I want to welcome you to this course. Now, this is going to be, we are going fully practical, okay? And you're only going to have room for questions at the end. So take down your questions as we are going, because we have very limited time. As you know, AutoCAD is a very complicated course. It takes actually years of people to go through this course, and still they can't really have the skills. But we have tried to summarize it in such a way that we are going to be hitting those points that are really necessary. And I hope everybody is going to understand. And if you have a question, you just save your questions, and we're going to be taking all those questions at the end. Okay, thank you. So now this course is the software that we're using for this, the version of AutoCAD which we are using is 2018. But if you have an earlier version, which is from 2013, you can still follow up without any problem. Okay. All right. So actually, what you should know before taking this course is, well, you should have a little bit of knowledge on AutoCAD. Even if you don't have, I believe you can still follow up, and you try to experiment on your own after the course. Okay. So there are a couple of files which we are going to be using for this course, thanks to the body that is sponsoring the course, that is Tadita Institute. They gave us a couple of exercise files. And if you're interested in getting those files, you can contact any admin, and they are going to provide that for you at the end of the session. So when you go over the session again, you can try to experiment with those files on your own. All right. So when you run your AutoCAD program, this is the screen that is going to come. This is what we call the welcome screen. Well, actually, I'm already in a drawing. So this is the start screen here. And in here, you have the option to start a new design, to open an existing drawing, maybe open a sheet, get more templates, and of course, recent documents that I've been working with, or you have been working with, and stuff like that. Okay, so I have this design open here. Well, this is the design that has been given to us by the institution that is sponsoring the course, and we are going to be using this to try to explain to you the program that we have for you. All right. So the first thing we are going to be looking at is, let's say you have a design open in front of you, or you are just on your screen, your blank screen. What we are going to be looking at now is what we call the application menu. Okay, most of you will be familiar with this, but there are a couple of settings which are in here, which are really pertinent for you to understand. Okay, so of course in here you have the option to open a new drawing, start a new drawing, open an existing drawing, save as, import, export, publish. That is not what we're really going to be looking at. Now, if you look over here, you are going to see that we have the option. You see this little drop down which you have here. If you were to click on this drop down, you can actually switch the documents which you have here from small icons. You can switch that to large, small images. It displays a preview of what has been opened there, as well as a matter of fact, you can actually see the preview, and you can also switch that to large. And again, you can change this from open documents. Now, open documents means it's only going to display what is currently opened on your screen, okay? But if I was to go back to recent documents, these are all documents which I have been working on, and you can see them from the list now. So if I were to click here, you see it displays just the documents that are open. This is a very handy feature because you might want to have just the documents which you are working on to be displayed in this list for some reason, for you to easily navigate through them. And so this is how you do it. Okay. All right. So the next thing I want you to look at is look here. You are going to see these are currently listed by what? By ordered list. So you can also set this by the access date. What do I mean by access date? This is going to set it in such a way that with respect to the date of which you actually access the file. And again, this is a very handy feature because if in case you forgot a file, but you can remember the date which you like maybe access that file, you can also use this, you know, to actually get that file. You can set by size, and of course you can set by type. By size, just set it according to the size of the project, okay? Like if you have a project which is safe and is heavier than the other project, what do I mean? Like in megabytes. Of course, if you have a project which is going to megabytes, then it means it must be a very large project. So you see, these are now currently set by size, but I'm just going to lead that by ordered list. And I allow this by the default, which are recent documents. Another feature for you to take note is here in the search commands. Now, in these search commands, there are a couple of things which you can do in here, which are also very important, which are not really known by a lot of people. But this is a very handy feature which can also help you in that you can search anything in here. Like for instance, if I wanted to find out the information of, let's say, maybe a line, if I type in the line, you're going to see that it gives me all the info which I want. I can, you know, you might want to know about lines and all that. You see, it's a very big list, very large list. And you can, anything you want as far as AutoCAD is concerned, let's search for maybe tables. You see anything that you want, you can search in here. And when it comes here, you just open that up. And of course, it's going to take you directly to that command, and you can easily know what that command is talking about. So I know a lot of you might have been working with this, but you might not have known a couple of these tricks. So these are the kind of tricks that we're going to be covering in this software. Now, another thing I want you to look at are the options. Now, if you come here to the options, let's just click here. Now it's going to open up this, well, we call this a toolbox, okay? And we're going to be covering this detailedly as we move ahead. Now in here, you have a couple of options which you can also set. Please don't come in here unless you know what you're doing, because these are the options that actually control how the software works. Now, one thing that you might want to do, which I really find it very important in here, is to change the color scheme. You might have discovered that as you are working with AutoCAD, there are times which, like if you are working with a color scheme which is, let's say, light. Now let me just click apply. Now what you notice is that you see that my color scheme here has changed to light, and I now have a light color scheme here. You might not have a problem with that, but the truth is, if you're working like this, with time, you might develop problems with your eyes if you are exposed to this software for a very long time. So you always want to switch that to the dark color scheme like this. Again, it doesn't change this anything, just that it changes the color scheme to dark, and the commands are now what? The commands are now white. So it is better for visibility like this. Okay. Now, there are a couple of other settings in here which we are going to be going over in the course of taking this course, but that is just the one thing that I just wanted to point out here for now. So I don't want to do any change in here. I'm just going to cancel out of that command. Okay, so basically every other thing in here, like starting a new project, opening an existing project, saving, save as, to import, to export, and all that, those are all commands which are very common, and you can easily go through those commands without any problem. Okay, the next thing that I want us to look at now are the ribbons. Okay, now what are ribbons as far as AutoCAD is concerned? So we're going to be looking at ribbons and panels. Okay, now what you have up here, this is what we call the ribbon. Okay, so where you have all these commands displaying up here is called what? The ribbon. Now these are all displayed separated into what we call tabs. Like for instance, see presently we are under the home tab. You have the insert tab, the annotate, parametric, view, manage, output, add-ins, and you have all those tabs which are all there. Now, of course, you are going to discover that you mostly be working under the home tab as far as this AutoCAD is concerned, because the home tab, just like any other program which you have in Windows, is customized in such a way that it has the commands which you are always going to be using, even if not all of them, most of the commands which you are going to be using in here. Okay, now presently we are under this home tab, and this is the ribbon. Now you're going to discover that under this draw, this draw portion that we have here, you have a series of commands which are like associated with the draw command. But if I was to click on this drop down, you're going to see we have more commands down here. So you have commands up here from the line. If I go back out, you see it disappears. So we have from the line to the arc, and you have maybe the rectangle and all that. But you also have other commands here like spline and all this. You might want to use this, but you discover that when I come down, it always goes up. So in order for you to constrain this here, what you might want to do is to click on this little option which you have at the side here, and that's going to pin down this. So you see, when I move my mouse away, you see what happens. It just remains there, and I can easily pick out that command and I use. Another thing which you might want to take note with in here is, let's say I want to work with the draw option, but I also want to work in the insert tab. Now you see, when I come in the insert tab, this goes off, and the only way for me to access this is to come back to the home tab, and I start selecting the commands back in here. But what if I wanted to be in here and I select a command in here without necessarily switching between the tabs? What do? Just come here, you left click right down here, you can pull this in the design like this, and you are going to see that you now have this command in here. Now watch what happens when I go in the insert tab. Now you see that I'm now in the insert tab, and I can work in here, but I can still use these commands in here without necessarily coming back to the home tab. Okay, so insert, annotate, you see they are now in here. But now, after I'm done, what happens? Do I just leave this like this? No, of course you want it to go back. So what do? Let's say you are still under the insert tab. Now, if you come up here right at the tip here, you are going to see there's an option here which says return panels to ribbon. So if I was to click there, now watch what happens. It disappears. It doesn't stick in the insert tab. Of course, it knows that this belonged to the home tab, and it goes back there. Okay, so you find the draw command back there, and of course you have all the options that are associated with this, with the draw command there and stuff like that. Okay, so the next thing we are going to be looking at is dialog boxes. Okay, now what are dialog boxes? Now dialog boxes are just a couple of commands which still come up in AutoCAD, but you get to deal with them by using a box. Now I'm going to demonstrate that. Let me come under the insert tab, and I try to create a block here. Now what are blocks? In your design, you're going to discover that, okay, if I was to draw this out normally with a line, these are going to be like 1, 2, and 3 different lines. Of course, I have a line, and then I can use a circle to bring it out one arc. Now, the reason that you see it all being highlighted like this is because this is a block. We're going to cover how you can create blocks as we move forward. Okay. So now watch what happens when I try to create a block here. So I'm just going to click on this drop down, click on create block. Now, this is what we call a dialog box. Okay. Now, this just contains a series of different commands still, which are associated with your design. And you can use this to actually create a dialog box, rather a block of any component which you have in the design. Let me demonstrate that real quick. What do we have here? We have a staircase here, right? So watch what happens if I want to select the components of this staircase. You see, this is just, I can select just the lines, and all this, but what if I wanted to select this staircase all at once? What do? I need to turn this into a block, right? So what you have to do is to come here, you create a block, and of course we have to give it a name. So let's just give it a name as, let's just call this staircase block. Okay. Now there are a couple of options which we have to set in here. Now, of course, as you can see, this is in millimeters. Well, these are the default units which you're always going to be working with in AutoCAD, which is millimeters. And that is because we're working in the metric system. What do I mean by metric system? Metric units are millimeters, meters, centimeters, and all that. And those are the units that we use, like here in Cameroon. or even in the most English-speaking countries, you mostly use metric units. But like in the US, they have what they call imperial units. But you rarely use that because, well, except you find yourself in a situation where you have to use that, but it's very rare. And imperial units are what we call feet and inches, okay? But we are mostly going to be working with the metric unit. So everything we are doing here is going to be centered around the metric system, okay? So in here, if we want to create this block, say the staircase, all you need to do is, now, of course, there are a couple of options to do here. You are specifying on screen, that's the base point. Of course, we might need to pick a point to specify on screen. That is okay. And of course, we want to convert to a block, okay? And what else is there? I think every other thing is okay. Yes, scale uniformly and all that. And now what we just need to do is to pick a point. So if we click here to pick a point, we can just pick this point, say maybe here. And then what we want to do now is to select the objects that we want to convert as a block. So what that does is, if we were to select, so just click here and I select the staircase, say like this, okay? And I just press the enter key on my keyboard. Now you're going to see that it is showing here that, okay, we have 75 objects selected, and you see a preview of the staircase there. Okay, watch what happens when I just click okay. Now you're going to see that when I highlight this staircase, this is now a block. Okay, it is not more like lines and order that you can select one at a time, but it is now a block. Just like this door that you find here, okay? Or this double door, these are all blocks, and this is how they were created, okay? But the whole idea here, what we were covering here, is the whole idea was centered around this dialog box. And you're going to see a lot centered around dialog boxes as we are going to be working, okay? So these are just a series of other commands that come up, which you need to customize, you need to further customize in order to work well with your design, okay? So those are just dialog boxes. Now I'm just going to go back to the home tab, and we're back in the home tab. And okay, let us continue. Now, the next thing that I want us to look at is the status bar. What is the status bar? If you look at the bottom right of your screen, you are going to see a series of options down here. Now, this is what we call the status bar, okay? Now, pay very close attention to this because this is very important as far as working in this software is concerned. A series of commands in here, which a lot of people don't always get, and you find yourself in a very uncomfortable situation when you are working with this software. Now, the first thing that you are going to see is at this site, you have what customization. Now, the customization just helps you to add or reduce the commands that you have here. Of course, on this status bar, you have a series of commands which aid you in the design. You have commands like the most important commands here. You can have like object snap. You can have like the tracking. You can have polar tracking, and of course you can have auto mode. We are going to cover this with a little bit of examples, okay, so you can understand what that means. But now let's look at the customization. If I was to click here, you are going to see these options that appear here. Now, watch what happens when I untick one of them. Now, of course, presently we have coordinates ticked. So if I was to click there, now you're going to see that the coordinates here have disappeared. Okay, now what are coordinates? Let me just click and explain this real quick. Coordinates means where your cursor is found on screen. Now you see that as I'm moving around with the cursor changes. Okay, the coordinates changes. Brother, please, just 1 minute. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so you find that the coordinate is changing. Now, what are these coordinates? This refers to the X, Y, and Z coordinates. What do I mean by that? Let me draw a line here. Okay, now look at this line. Excuse me. Look at this line here. Now, this going like this is in the X direction, and this is in the Y direction. So wherever your mouse is always found, there's always a coordinate associated to it whether in the X or the Y direction. And that is why you see here that only coordinates that are changing are these two coordinates, okay? Of course, you have this for X and you have this for Y. Now, you have a third coordinate, which just always remains at 0. And the reason that is happening is because presently we are in a two-dimensional view, okay? Which means you can only, whatever you do here, you can only draw in the Y and the X coordinate, okay? It is only when we are going to look at 3-dimension that you are now going to see that this third coordinate will be active, because now you can actually like do things like maybe extrude or press pull, and you are going to be doing that now in the third coordinate system, which is the Z coordinate, okay? So these coordinate systems, this coordinate is just important to show you where you are working presently in your workspace, like this, okay? So if you are not seeing that on your screen, know that that is because it is unchecked here. And of course, the next is the model space. You have the grid, you have the snap. So you can just walk around, you know, experiment with this, and you see how that looks like. Now, one very important option, which a lot of people don't always turn on, which is very important, is what we call the dynamic input. So please always make sure you turn on this dynamic input, and I'm going to show you the reason for that. Now, if I turn this on, now, watch what happens. Just a minute. Okay, let me just turn that on. Now you are going to see that this is it. Dynamic input is currently on. Now let me select a line and I try to draw in here. Now, watch what happens. You are going to see that this is showing me where the coordinate of this line is. Okay. Now, this was not what you find displaying, like you find specified first point, that was not displaying at first. Let me just turn off the dynamic input again, and you see what I mean. So let me turn this off. I select a line. Okay, for some reason, I think that is still displaying. All right, but I think maybe that is just doing that automatically. But that is the point. If your dynamic input is off, then you can't feasibly input the coordinate of where you want to start drawing. Like for instance, well, presently this is a little bit trickish. If you were to draw a line and you know the specific coordinate which you want to draw that in, you can just manually input that, and it's going to take you to that location. Okay, so just always make sure that dynamic input is turned on. Now, what other thing do we want here? Like auto mode is very important. Polar tracking, isometric. As for line weight, that is not really important. And dynamic universal coordinate system, that is not also really important. But okay, like for units, this is not really important too, because you get to set that manually. We are still coming to that. And okay, I think we are good to go. So you just have a look of how my screen is here, and you try to set up your screen to also be exactly like this, because these are going to give you options that here, which you are going to be using very often. Okay, now let's look at some of these options. Let's look at polar tracking, for instance. Now, what is polar tracking? If I was to click on this drop down, you are going to see that we have a tick here on 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 270. So it means that if you are drawing a line, it is going to snap at 90, 180, 270. Let me demonstrate what that means. Let me demonstrate what that means real quick. Okay, all right. So up here we have a line, okay? And watch what happens when I draw a line here. And I am, look at, I'm snapping this way, yes, of course. But you find that we are not having it snap in any direction. And that is because the polar tracking, which we have here, has been set to what? 90 degrees. That is why you discover that when I come up here, you see, you have those green calibrated lines which are snapping there. And if I come down here again to 90 degrees, you have it. So what happens if I want to draw a line at 45 degrees? Now you see that this is not really accurate, but you can actually make that accurate. How? You just come down here to polar tracking, and you can set that to 45 degrees, as you see there. So if I was to click on 45 degrees now, watch what happens when I try to draw a line. So this is 45 degrees, and you see that you can easily draw a line there. Now, what that means is at every 45 degrees, you're going to have a snap. Now look here, if I come up, that is 45 degrees still. and you can accurately tell that this is actually 45 degrees as you move through your design, okay? So at every 45 degrees, you're going to have that snapping. This is a very handy feature because it eliminates the idea of you trying to manually put in these angles. Now, of course, you can further customize this to your own angles, okay? If I was to come down here to tracking settings, it's gonna open this up. Let's say I wanted to draw an angle of maybe 22 degrees, okay? So you are going to discover that in here, we don't actually have an angle of 22 degrees. So if I was to come here under the tracking, and I can add an additional angle here. Now, if I say, okay, I put a tick in here in additional angles, I click on new, and I just type in 22 degrees in there, and I say, okay. Now, it's like nothing has happened, but if I was to click on the drop down now, you're going to see now that you have an angle there of 22 degrees. And for every 22 degrees, you can now have a snapping angle. Now, look here, 22, 44, 66, 88, and all that. Watch what happens when I try to draw a line now. And let's make sure that we have that active. So I just select that, select my line command. Now watch this. You see at every 22 degrees, you now have it snapping, okay? Just like that. This is a very handy feature, which is really going to help you in your design, especially when you are working with those complicated angles, which are very difficult to manually bring out. You can easily set those out and using your polar tracking, and you work with that. Now, by default, you always discover this is at 90, but you can work with it at 45 degrees because sometimes it becomes a little bit upsetting to always have it snapping like that when you are moving around. But it all depends on the kind of project you are working on. If you have a project which needs you to work with very accurate angles, then you are going to have to work in with this a lot. Now, what is the difference between polar tracking and auto mode? Now, with polar tracking, you can draw at any angle, okay? You can draw at any angle 360 degrees all around like this. But with the auto mode, you can only draw in two angles. That is in the X or the Y axis. Now, I've currently, now it's not like you turn it off. As soon as you switch on auto mode, you see the polar mode goes off, right? So if I also select a line, watch what happens now. I can only draw in the X axis. And if I want to draw an angle here, it is not possible to do that. That is because you are now in an auto mode, okay? And if I wanted to draw maybe a very straight line like this, you can easily do that. And you can keep going like this, just in 90 degrees, okay? Now, of course, you are going to discover that 90% of the time you are going to be working with the polar tracking. For some reason, if you want to work with the auto mode, that is how you do it, okay? All right. Now, the next thing that we are going to be looking at is we're going to look at some more settings as when it comes to lines, arcs, and all that. Okay, I'm just going to demonstrate that using this. Now, under the draw command, we have the line tool, which we have here. Now, I want to show you the difference between a line and an arc, okay? Now, with a line, you can just draw a straight line. And I'm sure a lot of you here who have been working with AutoCAD, you've been using this a lot. You can just always draw a line, no? You bring out your design with a line, you know, and stuff like that. And you can customize it by changing the angles, maybe polar, auto, and all that. And you just keep drawing, maybe bringing out your design to whatever design you want to bring out. But get into the habit of using a polyline, okay? Now, what do I mean? Now, watch what happens when I select a polyline. Let's say I wanted to bring out a design like this. Now I start my line, I come here. I'm just gonna click here. Now with the polyline, what happens is you can bring out other components still using the same command without necessarily having to switch between these other line types. Like for instance, let me demonstrate that by using the line command. If I drew a line like this, and at this point I want to draw a circle here, I have to end this command and I come and I select a circle like this, right? Okay. But now watch what happens when I'm using the polyline. if I start with a polyline and I come straight and I'm at this point, and let's say I want to switch to a circle or an arc, all I need to do is just to right click and I select an arc. And you see now that I can draw an arc still using the same line. And let's just say I'm okay with the arc like this. Now, if I don't end the command, it's going to ask me to draw another arc again, of course, but I don't want that. So I'm going to right click, okay, and I switch it back to a line. And you see that I continue drawing back my line. Can you see this? And then at this end, I just click, and then I can right click again, and maybe I select an arc again, or I just close the line. Now, when you click on close, it's just going to find the nearest point or at the beginning where you started, and it's just going to close that. So this is a polyline. Now, the difference is when you draw with a polyline, unlike a line, because if we were to create this similar join with a line, you are going to discover that it's going to come in different segments, because you have this as an independent line, this at the bottom as an independent line, and of course you have this arc here, and you have these two. But with a polyline, you are going to have just one line, and that is how a polyline works. Okay, now I'm going to use this to further expatiate again on the beauty of using a polyline. Now let's just go by again a polyline. Again, I'm going to start here. I draw my line straight. Now I'm going to right click, and let's say I want to create, like, say an arrow. Okay, so now I'm just going to come here to the width. Okay, now let's just say I give the width to be, now presently we're working in millimeters, okay, which means everything we are doing here is in millimeters. Okay, you can do the conversion. So let me just say I give a width of 1,000, and it's gonna ask me specify the end width. Let's say I specify it, I just say 1,000 again. Okay, now you see now that I have a very thick line, okay, that I have like this. Okay, okay, now watch what happens. I'm not gonna end the line. Again, I right click, I come down to width. Now, let me bring up the width to say maybe 5,000. That's the starting point, because of course you see there on the screen, it says what? Specify starting width. Now I bring that up to 5,000, enter. And then now it's asking me specify ending width. Let me just type 0. Now watch what happens. You see that you've created an arrow. Okay, so you see there are a lot of things which you can do with the polyline, which you can't really do with a line. Now try bringing this out with a line and see what happens. You are going to see that it's going to be very difficult, because you need to draw the line, maybe you offset, and then you form out this shape. Maybe then you use the hash command to hash this in. But at the end of the day, you are not still going to have a perfect something like this as to if you used the polyline. Okay, yeah, so those are some of the tricks which you might want to just look at as you are working with this software. Okay, now the next thing we're going to be looking at is how you can zoom and pan. Of course, a lot of you in here already know how to do that. But basically, the way you zoom is very easy. If you have a mouse that has the center mouse wheel, that's the wheel. In order for you to zoom is you just push the wheel up, and zoom in, you push it up, and to zoom out, you just, yeah, zoom out, you just push it down and stuff like that. And you see you can easily zoom in and out. So I'm just doing this using the mouse wheel. But now, let's say you're zoomed in like this and you want to see the whole design without necessarily, because of course you have to zoom out, you pan, and you try to center this. So a shortcut for you to just zoom to extent is just to double click on the mouse wheel, and it's going to zoom to the extent of whatever design that you have on screen. Okay, so if I was just to double click on the mouse wheel anytime, it just zooms to extent, and I can see the design, not only this design, also this. Okay, of course it's displaying this because you're telling the program zoom to the extent of whatever is being displayed, and that is why it is zoomed to this extent. Okay, so I'm just going to click that again, and you see now you don't only have to zoom by using the mouse wheel. You can also zoom by using these options, which you have at the right-hand side here, okay? So if you were to come here, you have by default, you have zoom extents. If I was to click on the drop down, please, I'm not going to cover all of this. You can experiment it with this on your own. The one I might want to cover is, zoom window. If I was to click on zoom window, now what zoom window does is, maybe I want to see the details of this staircase, okay? Maybe I want to see the details of this staircase. After I select that command, all I need to do is just to click here. I create a box around this staircase like so. You're going to see that it's going to zoom not just to the staircase, but it's going to zoom to the extents of that component, and you can see the details of that component very well. So that's just zoom window, okay? And then of course you also have the pan feature. So if you don't have maybe the middle mouse button on your keyboard to actually click like this and you pan around, what you can do is you can come here, you select this arm, and you come in your design. And when you left click, you're going to see that the arm it turns into like it's kind of grabbing the screen, as you can see that. So as it grabs it, you can just pull this around. And what you're doing now is you're actually panning, okay? Yeah, you're actually panning around the design. Okay, so those are some of the ways that you can move around your design. And of course, another way for you to do this, you don't necessarily always have to come here. You can just right click and you can still select the option to pan here. It's still gonna give you the same option. Or if I was still to right click, I can select the option to zoom. And now what this happens is you have to click where you want to zoom and you push your mouse. As you push in, you see it is zooming in, and as you drag out, you see it going out. And of course, when you are coming in, what do you discover? You discover that there's a plus sign which has been added on the magnifying glass which you have there. And when you're going out, find out that there is a minus sign or a negative sign which has been added there. And you can also find that very handy, okay? Please just save your questions for the end. And I see a lot of you texting even on WhatsApp. Just save your questions at the end. And when we are done, I am going to give room for questions, okay? All right. Okay, so the next thing that we are going to be looking at is what we call textiles, okay? All right, so let's say you are done with your design. It's a very beautiful looking design here. And now you want to add in some text in the design, okay? Because of course, this is just a blank design. You might want to label that to communicate your design intent, to the client. Maybe this is the living room, and you have some rooms in here. But looking at these designs, you can't really tell what is what. So you have to input or add some text in this design. So how do you do that? Now, of course, there are two ways for you to do that. You can either come under the Annotate tab, and if you come under the Annotate tab, you have the option that you can work with the text as you have here, or you can still stick under the Home tab, and I would advise you to just stick in here. As like I said at the beginning of this tutorial, the Home tab is customized in such a way that you can use this only to really work through your design without necessarily switching through all these other tabs, unless you really need to go through these other tabs. So in here under the Home tab, under the Annotate ribbon, which you have here, you are going to find what text, but that's not what you want to select. Let's go over a couple of settings before we go there. So I'm just going to click on the drop down that you have here. Now, the first option which you have here is what we call textile, and that is what you want to open. So you just click here, and then what will you discover? You're going to discover that you have, just like when we were looking at the blocks, you have a dialog box. This is another dialog box which has just opened up, and this now is associated with what? The text, okay? Now, by default, you are going to see this. This is always going to be on standard, okay? Now, standard means that these are just the standard settings which comes by default with the software, but you can further define your own type of text, okay? Now, there are a couple of settings which I would just want us to go over in here. The first thing is font name. Now, what is the font name? The font name is just the name that you want to associate with the text. Now, please, there's one thing I want you to take note here. When you are in here, okay, don't override this standard text. Create a new text style for yourself, because this is the default text style that comes with AutoCAD. And if you were to change any setting here, you're going to be changing the default text style, which comes with AutoCAD, and it's going to affect every other thing that you do because you're changing the default text style. So what you want to do is to come here to new, you click on new. Now let's just call this new text style. I'm just going to call it training. I'm just going to call this training like so. And I say, okay, now you're going to discover that we have a new style there, training. Let's go over a couple of settings. And the first thing I want to change is the name. Now, in here, there are a lot of text types that you have here, okay? But the one I really like to use is Verdana. And how do you select Verdana? I'm just going to start typing V on my keyboard, and you're going to see that comes up, Verdana. So just change that to Verdana. Then on the font style, you can change this to bold, italics regular, and all that. I'm just going to allow this to regular for now. As for the text height, let's just allow that as default, which is 0. And the width factor, we also allow it like this. Now, look here. There are a couple of settings which you can do here. Like, for instance, if you want your text for some reason to appear upside down, you can put a tick in here, and whatever you're typing in your design is going to appear upside down. I don't know, for some reason, if you want to do that, you can select this option, but I don't want to do that. So I'm just gonna remove the tick in there. You can make the text appear backwards. So again, for some reason, if you want to do that, you can select this option, but I don't want that. So I'm just gonna uncheck that. And I think for training with my text type of Vedana, I am okay with that. Let's just change this to be bold. That it should be bold, yes. And all you need to do is to click on apply. Now, when you click on apply, that does not mean that you have set that text type as the current working text type. What you want to do now is to come up here, you click on set current, okay? When you click on set current, you are going to discover that you have now set that text type as a text type which you are going to be working with. So let's go now in our design. Now we select the text and we try to put in a text in this design now. I'm going to click on this drop down. Now you are going to see in here now that under the text style, you have what? The training text style, which we adjust from creating. And that is the active text style, which is there. And that is what we want. So again, I just select text. And when I come in here and I click, and okay, all right. Now, let me click on the drop down and I explain something. You have two types of text in here. You have the multi-line text and you have the single line text. Okay, let's start with the single line text first, please. So I just click on single line text. And when I click in here, I'm going to be asked an angle, okay? The angle of which you want to type. So I'm just come in straight and I just click here like that. Sorry about that. Well, I actually took an angular. So let's just do that again. Line. So I just want this to be 90 degrees. I'll just press enter. And you can start typing. So let's say this is the parlor or the living room. So I'm just going to type in the parlor. Now look at what is happening in here. You see that not only is it typing in the text type Verdana, but it is bold. Why is this bold? Let's just do that again. Again, I click in here and I'm just going to press enter because I want that to type at an angle of 0 degrees and on a straight line. So I just press enter again and I just type in the hello, just like that. And of course, when I'm done, I press enter, enter again. Okay, we're having a little problem there, surely with the scale. That's why it is not displaying. Okay, let us just see. Let me see. Enter. Just a minute. Enter. Okay, let's just type that again. All right, now that is huge. Now enter, enter again. And we actually have that. Okay, that is really big. So let us adjust that real quick. So we'll come back to the text style. And for the height, okay, the height currently is set to 0. We'll have it big here. So probably we set that up without knowing when we were starting. So let's just click there again. Okay, Now specify height, as you can see here. Now currently it is set to 1,260, but that's not what we want. We want the height to be 0. So please just type 0 there, you press enter. Okay, it's saying here that the value must be positive. So let's type 1 in there. Press enter, specify angle rotation, no. Okay, enter again. So that is why you had the text big like that, because maybe as we're zooming out, get the height to be really big. So if we type hello, like that, enter again. Okay, again, it disappears. Now, that is probably because the height that we're selecting there for 1 is small. So let's change that real quick. Now, we don't want to be doing this all the time. So what we can do is to come under here, back to the text type, under the height, let's put this to be at 10 millimeters, okay? We click on apply, close. Now let's try that again. Drop down, single line, click here, press enter, and let's just type follow again, enter, enter. Okay, that still goes off for some reason, but actually it doesn't goes off. The thing is the scale is too small, as you can see here. Now, this is the first one we typed. As you can see, it's really small, so that is why we have to zoom in. And I think we actually did one before. Yeah, okay, this was the first. This is really small. And then we had this, and then we had this. So it's showing that the 10 millimeters that we set for that is still really small. So we might want to take it up again a bit. Let's say we take that up to, let's take that up to 100. Apply, we set current, close. Again, we do that again. To come in here again and you modify it, maybe you can change this to 150 and it's going to take that up again, okay? Now, of course, you can always do this manually when you want to type, but it is very good to take your time and you set your text type to be in such a way that it is default. Now, let me just put this at 150 so that anytime you are text, you don't need to be doing these settings over again, okay? Let's just do that again. Just click in here, enter, and I type in there now, hello. And okay, now we are good to go. I think that is more visible. Now, the bold is kind of making the text not to really be visible. So what we might want to do too is maybe to unbold that. So let's unbold this. So we just put that to just be regular, apply, set current, close. And now you see, not only does it change what you have to start typing, it is going to overwrite whatever you had done before. Why is that? That is because we just gave a new setting for the current text style which we are using, which is what? The training text style. Okay, now we have been using the single line. Let's see what happens when you work with multi-line text. Multi-line text, unlike single line, is just a reverse of this, because with that, you get to type on multi, you can create a list and stuff like that. So let's say maybe you want to create a list of, I don't know, for some reason you want to create text in a list. The first thing you have to do is you have to draw out the outline of what you're actually drawing here is the outline of what you want to type. So let's say you have a text that you want to type just in here. Now you have to make sure that the outline just covers just this part. But if you want it to extend and come this way, okay, it should also extend and come in like that. So if I was to click here and click in here, now you are going to see it's going to start up here. Now, what happens? Let's just say I start typing here, like, let's just say this is the start, like that. Now, if I was to press enter, you're going to see it goes to the next line. And the difference between this and this is you can actually further customize it. Like, for instance, if you discovered, as soon as we drew that box, you discover that you had other settings which appeared up here, okay? Now, maybe this is a heading, you can highlight that, and maybe you can bold, underline, okay? Maybe change the color to a different color, maybe red, or I don't know, green or blue, or whatever. It depends on what you're trying to communicate. And another thing you can also do is you can bring in bulletin, just like what you have in any word editing software. So I can decide to bullet this, maybe just maybe I'm typing a list of things and I want them to appear in bullets. Let me zoom in so you see that better. As you can see, like that. So whenever I press enter, it's going to add a new bullet and it takes me to the next line, just like that. But now what is happening here? You are going to discover that this is typing in the Vedana type. It recognizes the text type that we were using. And of course, you see that is it here. The text style is what is still the training and not the standard. Now watch what happens when I hover over standard. You're going to see that the text also changes because it's trying to bring in the attributes of this text style. And of course, that is why you have that change there. Okay. So customize your text style the way you want, and you can just apply them by always selecting them like this, and you work in your document without any problem. Okay. So if I wanted to type in here now, all I need to do now is just to come back to my text type. I don't select multi-line. Please don't have the habit of just coming and selecting commands. Any command that has a drop down, make sure you click on the drop down to select the real command associated to what you want to text. Because if I was to come up here and I just click, it's going to select but the first command that is here, which is the multi-line text, but that is not what I want. Okay, what I want is a single line text, and I just select that. I come in here, click, press enter, and maybe this is a bedroom. Well, that's actually really small to be a bedroom, but just for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm just going to call that a bedroom. Enter again, and you have your bedroom there. So that is how you can go ahead and you label your design to really communicate what your design is talking about. Okay, so basically that is just everything you have to know as far as text are concerned, and modifying the text the way you want to suit your design intent. Okay, all right. So the next thing that I want us to look at is dimensions. Okay, now a lot of people, even professionals, have a very huge problem when it comes to dimensioning your design. Okay, but there are just a couple of settings, just little tricks which you have to apply in order for you to be able to dimension your design properly. Okay, now what we're going to be doing now is we're going to create a dimension style from scratch. Okay, we're going to create a dimension style from scratch, and I'm going to walk you through the procedure of how you can further customize that to suit your design intent. Okay, all right, let's get into it. So in order for you to dimension, again, you can do that under the annotation tab, which you have here, or you can come under the annotate tab. But please, I will want to advise you, when it comes to dimensioning, right? Have the habit of coming actually under the annotate tab, because there are a lot of options in here which you are going to be using, which are not necessarily in here, because in here you can just dimension maybe linearly, and if you click on the drop down here, you have all these other options, but they are not really as explicit as if you were to under the annotate tab. Okay, all right, so come under the annotate tab, and you want to be under the dimension, which you have here. Okay, and you have this little arrow which you have here. Okay, I want you to click on that, and you are going to see that what do you have? You have another dialog box which appears, and this one now is going to help you to set your dimensions out. Okay, now by default, again, you are going to have the standard dimensions. By default, you have your standard dimensions which are in here, and we're not going to be using these. Please never modify a standard setting in any software. Okay, because if you modify the standard setting, you're changing the settings of that software. Okay, the way the software came, you're going to be changing that, and that is really dangerous. So what we want to do here is we are going to create a new dimension setting. Okay, so come to new, and I'm just going to call this training. I'm going to call this training. Let me just call that training dim style, as the dim stands for dimension. And of course, yeah, I want this to be standard. And noun, please don't make that annotative. We're going to cover annotative in a later tutorial. Don't make this annotative. Now, let me just explain what this means. Now, in here, you have use for. It shows here all dimensions. What does this mean? That means that if you're dimensioning whatever in your design, it is going to use these dimension settings. What do I mean? If you're dimensioning for linear dimensions, angular dimension, radius, diameter, ordinate, leaders, and tolerances, it's going to use these same dimension settings which you want to put now. That's very good, okay? Because of course you want to have a symmetrical dimension settings for everything. But if for some reason you want to have other dimension settings for maybe when you are dimensioning angularly, what do I mean angular? Like you want to dimension, say maybe this arc here, then you can also further set that. But of course, I don't want to do that. I want to use these settings for all my dimensions, so I'm good with that. So all I need to do now is just to click on continue, and you're going to have this dialog box which appears on this other dialog box again. Okay, so this dialog box now is going to help us to be able to set out our dimensions, our dimension type, which is the training dim style. Okay, as you can see up here, new dimension style, training dim style. All right, now please, the first thing I want to you to take very special note here is under this like dimension lines, anything that has to do with line type, set that to the layer. Okay, I'm going to explain why. So as a color, that doesn't really matter what color you attribute to your dimension style, but I'm just going to take red. I always like using red. So change that to red or any color which you think deem it necessary. But please, you also want to be careful to select a color that is printable. What do I mean by printable? There are some colors, or you discover that there are some dimensions that when you print them out, you can't find these lines, like a line to find up here. The reason is because there are some colors which you select, which the printer, maybe you're printing in black and white, will not really print that well. But if you have a color like red, it's very good, okay? So you also have to make sure you take special note in that. So I'm just gonna set this to red. Of course, I've set anything that has to do with line, change that to what? By layer, just by layer. So just move around, I change all of this to by layer, okay? So set everything here to by layer. Baseline spacing, what is baseline spacing? Let's just add that to 1. And as soon as I press tab, you're going to see that. Okay, that did not really change much. Let me just put something that will really change, and you see, let's put that to 10 millimeters. Tab. Okay, still that is not really changed. Well, actually, the baseline spacing is just this. Okay, I think since we're working in millimeters, that's not really changed. Let's go that to 100. Tab. Okay, still that is not changing for some reason. Okay, all right. I don't know why that is not really changing again. Let me just put that back to the default, which was there, 0.36. Sometimes you have these glitches like this. And I just press the tab. All right, so press dimension line 1. Now, I don't know, for some reason you might need to do this. Now you see what has happened. It took out the first dimension line, but we don't want that. We want both dimension lines to be visible. And of course, you can suppress the second one. For some reason, you might want to do that, but we want all of them to be visible. Okay, extension lines, the color, you can change that to red too, so it should be symmetrical. Both dimension line and extension line should have the same color, of course. And again, make sure you set all this to by layer, okay? Extend beyond dimension lines, let's set that to 1, and you see how that looks like. And now that is too long, so let's instead drop that down to maybe 0.5. And again, that is still huge, so let's just put that to 0.1. And yeah, I think that is better. Or maybe let's just do 0.3. Okay, that is good. Now offset from origin is currently set to 0.06. Let's put that to be 0.1. Now offset from the origin is this, okay? How much offset do you want to leave from the origin of where you're dimensioning to the beginning of the start of the line? Now, of course, you want to leave an offset because you don't just want it to be crowded. As you can see, there's an offset here, of course, but you can still tell that this dimension is from here to here, okay? You don't really want it to start that exactly there. But if for some reason you want that to begin there, all you need to do is set this to 0. And yeah, of course, you're going to see that your line is going to start there. I don't want that, so I'm just going to put that at 0.2. And okay, I am okay with that. Now, extend to suppress, please just always allow this ticked unticked. Okay. So I think basically these are all the settings which you really need to do in here as far as the lines are concerned. And now let's go to the next, which are symbols and arrows. Now, if you're working with an architectural drawing, like say a building, let's say a house, the closed field is not really a good choice. Not really a good choice for the field. Now, what you want to select is the architectural tick, okay, like what you have in this design. Architectural tick is really going to make your design to be really professional. And of course, it also displays very well, and you can easily tell between the dimensions and all that. So set that to architectural tick. For the leaders, change this to architectural tick 2. And then the arrow size, what is the arrow size? The arrow size is just this, it's just the tick itself. For some reason, maybe you might need to add or reduce that, but I'm just going to allow this, the default, which is 0.1. But if you discover that your arrow size like this is not displaying well in your design, or it's not really large, please, this is where you need to come and increase the size, okay? So you can increase the size here to maybe 0.5 or 1, depending on how the display is. You just keep increasing until you get the right display in your dimension. I'm okay with this, so I'm just going to allow that there. As for center marks, yes, of course, I want some center marks. Of course, you can also put that known, but yeah, I want some center mark. What are center marks? To see this displays the center of this circle, okay, like this. So yeah, of course, I want that to be displayed. So yeah, I'm just going to allow that there. And dimension break here is set at 3.75. That is okay. As for these other settings, please, you don't need to really worry about this. Just allow this as the default. This is where you really need to concern yourself. Let's go to the text. Now, under text, okay, since we haven't created a dimension style, we are just going to work with the standard style, okay? Oh, actually, we can use the text style which we created for the text. Okay, so let's just select that, training still. And well, you are going to see that it's going to, yeah, of course, this is for good reason too, because the way we set up the text style is different from the way we set up this. So you find out that the units are kind of conflicting. That is why you have that. So let's just switch that back to standard. Let's just switch that back to standard. And of course, we have that. Okay, now for text color, let's change that to red. Yes, of course, because you want the color to also be the same as this. Now, for some reason, I don't know why we don't have the leaders again. So let's come back to the arrow and let's change that to 10. And we are not yet there. Let's change that to 100. Okay, now you see it. Now, the reason this is happening is because we changed the text style to training. Now you see that kind of conflicted and it changed the settings here. So you see, what have I done? I've come back here and now I'm trying to set the arrows to actually match this current text style, which you have here. So that is why you see me increasing it. And if you're okay with that, I'm just gonna set that to 150 even. Now, please, this is in millimeters, okay? So 150 millimeters is just 15 centimeters. Okay, or 0.15 meters if you want to do the conversion. All right, so I think I'm satisfied with that. Yes, I'm okay with that. So let's continue. Now, for text placement, of course, I want this to be vertical and centered. For some reason, if you want it to, like I send it above or outside, you see the change. Please just always allow that centered. I think this is best, okay? And view direction left to right, that is okay. Horizontal center, yeah. Text alignment, horizontal is okay. Let's go to fit. Now, under here, there are really no settings which you really need to bother yourself with that much. And for units, now this is where you still have to do some little settings. Okay, presently the unit format is set to decimal. Now, what that means is that is why you're having this point here. 996.25. That's because this is set to decimal. Now for the precision, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 decimal places. Okay, now that's too much if you ask me. So I'm just gonna drop down. Let's put that to 0 decimal places even. Except for some reason you need decimal places. So let's just put that to 0. And you see that that has actually taken off all the decimal places. Let me just bring that to 2. You see the decimal places are back there. But if we put that to 0, no decimal places. I'm okay with that. All right, that's just the main setting which you might want to do under primary units. All these other settings, please just allow them by default, okay? Now, alternative units is if in case you are working on a project which needs imperial units, like feet and inches, then you can turn on alternative units, but I don't really see why you have to do this because 99.99% of the time you are going to be working with projects on that use metric units, that's millimeters, centimeters, meters, and all that. So just allow this by default. Tolerances, that's not really important. For tolerances, you can, well, actually, this is not important. Just allow this to be by default, allow this on the default settings, okay? So we have successfully created our new dimension style, and you can see the preview from here. And if you are okay with that, all you need to do is just to click OK. And you have that, and you can set current, and it's going to override the current dimension style. I don't want to do this because it's just the same thing, as you can see. It's just a replica of the same thing. These are really the dimension styles that I work with. And so you can just try to set up your dimension styles to be like this, okay? All right, so that is just it as far as setting up dimension styles are concerned. And when you are done, all you need to just do is to set current. And when you have any dimension now, let's bring in a couple of dimensions. So I'm just gonna come under here where I have dimensions. I click on linear, and let me just get a linear dimension. So maybe from this point to this point. So I click here from this point to this point, and you have that dimension like that, okay? Now, what if I wanted to dimension say from here to here? Does it mean I have to be doing this over and over? Now, when I come here, of course, you can still click there and you dimension this point. But you see that when you want to place it, it might not really be accurate. So what do? When you place your first dimension, what you might want to do is just to click on the continue option, which you have here. Now, when I click on continue, what happens is it continues from the last point that I dimension, okay? And all I need to do is just to move around now and I pick the points as long as it's in the same line. And you see, I just keep dimensioning just like that until I am at the end. So this is also a very handy feature. And when I'm at the end, all I need to do is to just tap on the escape key. Now, this is one of the reasons why I said it is very good for you to be under the annotate tab when you are carrying on your dimensioning and not under the home tab. Because under the home tab, even though you have a linear dimension, which you have here, but you don't have the option to continue like you have under the annotate tab, like for instance here. So that goes same if, say, we want to dimension coming down like this. So you place in your first dimension, say, like from here to the edge of this wall, like so. And then all I need to do now is just to click on continue. And I can decide to dimension the thickness of the wall. It's kind of uniform thickness there. That's actually supposed to be 150. That's 15 centimeters. And I just continue. And I continue just like that. Okay. So we have that. All right. So that is just it for dimensioning. Now there are a couple of options here which you can want to experiment on, like this. This is just smart dimensioning. Now what this does is you just select an object where you want to dimension and you have the dimension appearing there, okay? So for instance, if I wanted to dimension, say maybe this line, if I was to just click on that line, it's just gonna dimension the whole line. Now you're not really going to be using this very often. That's why I don't even want to cover it, because you are going to mostly be working with the manual way of dimensioning, which is the linear dimension. And you can add that with the continuous, and you are going to have a very good dimension flow in your design, okay? So it goes for the same, it goes the same. So let's say I want to dimension this design, and maybe with the openings too and all that. All I need to do is just, I start, let's say I start from the exterior wall. Okay, of course, you know, you can dimension the openings if it's for the start. So I dimension from there to here, then I continue, and you see it peaks from this point, and all I need to do now is just to click, 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 just like that. And you have all your dimensions in place. And when you're done, you just press the escape command and you have that. Okay. All right. So I think those are the little tricks that we had as far as dimensioning is concerned. And yeah, I think that is it for dimensioning. And the next thing that we are going to be looking at now, we are going to look at how you can add like a table. Let's say maybe after carrying out this design, you have a list of things which you want to like maybe list, which has to do with the design, maybe your doors, schedules, or windows, or some details of the staircase. You can't go and you're writing everything in the design. What you want to do is to create what we call a table. Now, of course, you can create that easily by just coming here and you select a table, the table command here, and you discover what happens as soon as I click on that, this appears. Now, what is this? Well, this is actually where you set up your table, okay? And this is the preview. So whatever settings you are doing, you're going to have the preview in here, okay? Let's say I wanted to create a table of commands here, which are going to show the type of doors which are in this project, okay? This is how you do it. Okay, so let's just click on the table. We're going to have, again, this dialog box that appears, of course. This is another dialog box again. So I just want to allow this to be standard. Of course, this is just going to be a standard, except you create a new table, but this, you just use a standard style. And you can start from an empty table or from a data link or from object data in the join data extraction. Please, we're just going to start from an empty table and we work our way through, okay? So by default, it has created a table of 5 columns, as you can see here. So what happens is, if you want a table, if you want more columns, all you need to do is just come in here. If I say, okay, give me a table of 4 columns, I can drop this down to 4. I can raise that up to even 10. I can manually put that to even be 20. Or now let me just bring that back to 5. Okay. Now column width is at 63.5 something. Let's make that to be symmetrical. I'm just gonna put in a width there of maybe 75. Now that's 75 millimeters. Okay, that's 75 in millimeters. So yeah, columns 5, column width is data rows. Let's just allow that at let's say 5 too. And what we now want to do is just to click on OK, and that's gonna actually specify the insertion point. And as soon as you click, now you are going to find this long line that appears here. This is just asking you to put the heading, but I don't just want to place that now, so I'm just gonna place the empty table. And well, this is the table which is appearing to really be small as compared to the design. And the reason this is small like this is because of the scale that we're working with currently. Now we are going to be covering this later, okay? Now presently we are working at a scale of 1:1, okay? We're still coming to scales. When we get there, you are going to understand. But for now, just try to understand what this is about. So this is just like any other table, like what you have in Excel, like in an Excel sheet. And in here now, you go ahead and you input all your information as far as customizing this table is concerned. So if I was to double click in here, I can just start typing maybe designation, press enter, and it just automatically takes me to the next line, and I can just keep doing that, and I can create my schedule in here. Now, if I wanted to bring in a heading, it's going to be up here, like a title for my table. All I need to do is just to double click. Okay, just a minute. let's just get rid of that. I'm gonna bring in a new table again. Table. Let's specify a window instead of an insertion point so we can constrain it to the window, okay? So specify window, yeah, columns 5, we're okay with that. So I just click okay. Now specify window means you draw out a window. Okay, just a minute. I'm having, I think the software is a little bit, it's crashing a bit. Oh. Oh, sorry about that. Okay. All right, please, just for the purpose of time, because we still have a lot to cover, but we're almost running out of time for today. So I'm going to come back to these tables tomorrow, okay? Now, one thing I want you to, I want to talk about in this session is how you can work with the AutoCAD A360, okay? This is very important. Now, a lot of you always have this. Now, you discover when you install your software, you always have this. It always comes up. A lot of you, 99% of people in here, you ignore this. But this is very important because this helps you to synchronize. Okay, let's say I've done my settings in here. I have my layers, I have my units, I have everything set up. Now, if something happens and I need to move from one environment to another, if I had synchronized my settings here, all I need to do is just to have access to internet connection. It doesn't really matter the version of AutoCAD which I am working on. What I can do now is just to reload my settings, and you're going to have all your settings in place. It doesn't only end there. This also creates you a cloud account, okay, which you can use to save all your designs. It's just like those of you who are in here who knows what you call a Google Drive. You know, you can use a Google Drive to save your information and all that. So this is like an AutoCAD or an Autodesk Google Drive, which you can use to save your designs and all that. Now, the first thing that you want to do before you can have access to this is to have an Autodesk ID. It's free to create it, okay? It's very free to create it. And when you've created that, what happens is when you are in the software, it doesn't matter whatever software you are in, whether you're in AutoCAD or you're in Revit, as long as it's an Autodesk software, you are going to see this option up here, which is sign in. Now, of course, you have to have internet connection in order for you to sign in, okay? So if I also click on this drop down and I say sign into Autodesk account, let's just give it some time. Okay, it's gonna ask me for my, yeah, of course, it's gonna ask for the email, the password and all that. So let me just type in the email there. The email here is pilotechconstruction@gmail.com. Like so, okay. And next, now of course, it's gonna ask me to put in my password. Now let me just get that password online. I have a lot of passwords, so okay, there you go. Just copy that and I paste in there. There you go, and I just sign in. Okay, now look up here. Now you're going to see now that this is going to change, and now I am signed in. Okay, now this means that I am signed into Autodesk, and you see there's a message there. Welcome to Autodesk 360. Okay, now what this helps is whenever I'm working now, I just always have my synchronize my settings is always active. Now what does this mean? Any setting I do in my design is just automatically being backed up, okay, in such a way that even if I was to lose all the information that I have here, I'm going to still have my settings that are already backed up, and then I can just load that in whatever environment I find myself. Okay. Now, of course, you have other options like to share the design view, to share a document, open local, all this. Yeah, so you can then experiment with this. But the important thing for you to note is before you can have access to this, you need to have an Autodesk ID. Please, if you don't have one, just go to your Google browser, you type in Autodesk ID, okay? It's free to create. I think all you need is just to have a Gmail account, and of course, it's going to ask you fill in the Gmail account, maybe your email, fill in the password. It's going to take you to a verification process where they send you a mail to your email, and you just need to verify and you're in. So make sure every time you are working, synchronize. The synchronization option is already on. But of course, you always have to be online in order for that to work, because this is 100% online. So you just have to be online and ensure that you are signed in. Like as you can see now, I'm currently signed in, Autodesk Construction. So whatever I'm doing now is also being synchronized online. Okay, so this is also a very handy feature which you might want to exploit, which is very important because a lot of times which you might be working and you don't really have time to maybe easily save. Even though there is Autodesk by default, it saves after every 10 minutes. AutoCAD by default, it saves your design. It creates a backup file after every 10 minutes. But again, just for security reasons, it's good for you to still have this option, because not only does it save your design, but it also saves your settings. What do I mean? If I have a couple of settings which I'm using on this design, it is saving that already. And if for some reason I want to use those same settings in the next design, all I need to do is just import those settings and I'm good to go. Like for instance, you see, we started here, we've done a lot of things, we've created a text style, we've created a dimension style and all that. You don't need to be doing this on every design, okay? You don't need to be doing this on every design. What you want to do is, if I open up a new design now, all I need to do is just to sign in, and then I load those settings and you're good to go, and you just start from there. And of course, it's also going to help you because you're going to save you time and you're going to have that consistency in as you work with your projects. Okay, so that is just something that I wanted to point out to, which I think is also very important as far as working is concerned. Okay, all right. Now, right now, okay, we still have a couple of things to cover, but we're already running out of time. This is already 9:30, and I know Mr. Diodone, Mr. Tamon has a package, something which he needs to fill us in. So I'm just going to stop here for today, and I'm going to take some questions just for 10 minutes, and then we'll give the floor to Mr. Tamon so that he can come in and he fill us in with more details as far as the course is concerned. And then we end up for today, and then we continue tomorrow. Okay, so if you have any questions, you can just unmute your mic and you ask your questions before we give the floor to Mr. Tamon. Any questions? Okay. If there are no questions, then I think everything was well understood. And even if you didn't really follow up, you can still follow up from the recorded session as is going to be provided in the forum. Okay, Mr. Tamon, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Wahidari, for that excellent practical session you just held now. I think it was a blast. It was a really great session. And I believe each and every one of you here have actually learned something from this training today. All right. So I'm just going to give you guys 2 minutes. Just go to the chat area, type in what you think you've learned from this training. Or if you have, if you can unmute your mic or you just raise your hand, if you check below your chat, you're going to see reactions. You click on reactions and you raise up your hand. If you have, if you can just indicate, let's actually know if you actually followed up. Just try to give us just give us some points which you were able to get from this session. All right, so we're just going to take 2 minutes and we're able to do that. Or you can go to the chat area and just type in what we're able to learn and what you expect of us in our subsequent sessions. Can anyone do that, please? Can each and every one of us do that? Just go to the chat area, type in what you were able to learn today, and let's see if you actually followed up the training. All right, the forum is we don't have a lot of participants today. So I'm just going to call the names, all right? I'll just call your names and you'll be able to unmute your mic and try to tell us what you're able to get if you actually followed up this session. Roderick, I'll begin with Roderick. Mr. Roderick, how was the session? What were you able to learn and was it really helpful?
Yes, the session was a success.
All right, great. So were you able to, did you actually get some few aspects of things which you did not know before?
Yes, there are actually a lot of things I got to understand that I did not know before.
All right, that's great, perfect, perfect. We move to Jerry. Jerry, how was the session? Are you there, Jerry? All right, we have Mbu Tanyi. Can you unmute your mic? How was the session? Let's get your own review.
Yeah, thank you. No, the session was good. It was good, and just it was just the basic, and I already have some ideas on the basics.
All right.
Yeah, but I actually, the new things I've actually learned like the way to save the drawing. Like you said to create your Autodesk account. Yes, I actually learned that today.
Okay, perfect.
So
I'm very happy.
Yeah, I was good.
Okay, great. I'm very happy you were able to learn something new today. Nelson? Nelson? Yeah, I can get you. I can get you. Oh, your mic is breaking. Your mic. All right. Since your mic is, since your network is really breaking, we're going to give the floor to. Your network is really breaking. Mr. Perez, can you just enlighten us as what you were able to learn in this training session? All right. Okay, guys, that was a very it was a very interesting session. I hope you all enjoyed the session. Tomorrow we are bringing you another package, and in tomorrow's session we are going to be talking about things related to Revit, related to we have Lumion, we have Camtasia. These are all the packages which Tadita Group Institute actually offers. All right, and in tomorrow's session we are going to give you a rundown on what is expected of you to be able to understand what these programs can give you in terms of in terms of where you are and in terms of the developed countries. And we're equally going to take you through some of the professions that are actually out there, which you might not have them back at home, but what this particular program can help you. Now, there are a lot of people who complete from school, they are done as architects, they are done as engineers, then they go and sit at home. They have nothing doing. There are some who are opportune to get a job. There are some who decide to become an entrepreneur, all right? So tomorrow we are going to have a little drill to help you understand what it takes. What do you do after this step, all right? Mr. Wahila Richie is going to come in and give you a drilling about most of the equipped softwares which are being used here in the United Arab Emirates and how you can move from one step to another and actually come out with something very fantastic. All right, I'm sure he's going to bring out real life designs, which you're going to actually see how things are happening in real life tomorrow in tomorrow's session. All right, and we are going to take you to understand what is actually happening here, what is actually happening in the United States, and how you can actually fit in. what do you do when you are done from school? What is the next step? Or if you're working in any organization, what can you do to step up your skills or to move from one level to another? All right, those are things we are going to be covering tomorrow. Today was just, we just gave you a tips of an iceberg, so you just try to understand where we are coming from, because I believe as a general session, everybody understands this particular software. Everybody has one way or the other understood how the software functions. But believe me, there is more to what we have just given you. What we have just given you is just a brief introduction to this particular software, because there is more. This program takes 2-3 months before you are able to understand approximately maybe 50% of it. All right, so make sure you attend the session tomorrow. Ensure you attend the session tomorrow. And for tomorrow's session, we are going to ensure that those who participate in tomorrow's session right up to the end, we are going to provide them with certificates of participation. All right, this was not what we put for this program, but due to the fact that we're able to have students who actually sat down throughout this session right up to this level, then I think it is very good for us to give you maybe a certification of participation. All right, we should give you a certificate of participation to show that you actually were committed to this session. And of course, if in future you decide to take any very big program, then you're going to actually have that recognition. So like I said before, we have 8 students, and I think I know each and every one of you, your names here very well. Make sure at the end of this session, you just send in your email address. You can send them to me, or you send them to Mr. Hilary Chi, so that we take that down. So that tomorrow, if there are other students who are going to join us, then we are going to equally include them as well. Remember, we are only going to give certifications to those who actually participate in this session and that of tomorrow. Those who are going to come in tomorrow, no, we are not going to actually acknowledge them that way, because they did not actually start this program from the beginning. All right, so I want to give a big congratulations to you all who have actually participated. This is one way to success. All right, do you know why I say one way to success? There are many organizations in Cameroon, or many institutions in Cameroon, that will not actually give you the knowledge which you need. All right, I believe you all understand what I'm saying. You can go to university, but those real life scenarios you will not get. But here at the Dialog Group Institute, we ensure that if you are able to take any program, by the time you're done with that program, you are fit for the market. There is nothing you will not be able to do when you are done from there, and you can be able to feed yourself in any society which you find yourself. Remember, United Arab Emirates itself is the bedrock when it comes to engineering and architect. That's the reason why so many people come here. So many people come to United Arab Emirates for what? For tourism. And to ensure that the country is very, very sophisticated in terms of infrastructure, they ensure that they bring in the best engineers, all right? They bring in the best architect. That's the reason why their buildings are so beautiful. They ensure that both the interior and the outer section of their buildings are very, very okay. And that's the reason why each time we have trainings like this, we ensure that we give Mr. Hilary Chi the blueprints, so that he should actually work with what is available here. And with what he has actually gotten, especially when he took the accreditation from London International. If you see the projects which he's executing back home now, they are top-notch products. They are top-notch projects. Projects which I tell you, they are projects that have a lot of weight. All right. So make sure you stick with us. Make sure you come back tomorrow to continue with this session. Believe me, tomorrow will be more powerful than what you've just had today, because I'm going to really open your eyes, and you're going to see that you have been sleeping. You're going to see that you've not started anything as far as your career is concerned. We have a lot of big guns here. We have giant companies here that they have their specifications, and I'm going to drill you on all those specifications. What does it take for you to leave your home and go to another country and actually fit in? We have people who have studied engineering in Cameroon, people who have studied architect in Cameroon, but when they come here, what they do is they recruit them in companies, but what they do is maybe they are working like laborers, like you're digging. You're not actually imputing what the skills you've gotten from school. Why is it so? That's because you don't have the skills that are required here. All right, that's why we need to drill you on that, and you need to understand what it takes to become a professional. So please make sure we have 6 participants who have stayed up to this end. Please, Mr. Hilary, please, you take note of that as well. All right, so that tomorrow, once you guys come back, you attend the second session and you complete, then we are going to see what to do as far as the certification is concerned. I have just voiced that down. All right, now I'm going to take it back to the institution. All right, I'm going to note it down. Let me just do that immediately. One thing I'll just do is, please just go to if you're using your smartphone, just go to your WhatsApp. all right, immediately, and you send in your email address and your names, all right? Send your email address and your name so that we are going to see how we are going to handle this program. All right, thank you all for attending this session. Please, if there are any questions, you can ask. I'm just going to give 2 minutes. If you have a question, ask the question so that we can wrap up with this session. Any question?
And there's no question, sir.
Okay, perfect, great. Thank you all for attending this session. I don't know if Mr. Wahilari has any word or two, so we can wrap up with this session.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tamon. No, I just want to applaud everyone for attending. You know, normally when it comes to this field, a lot of people, one thing that a lot of people don't have is the patience. But if you are patient enough, and there are two things, patience and consistency, you're actually going to get it right. So the package that we have for you for this AutoCAD essential training, we're going to continue with it tomorrow. And at the end of the day, you're going to discover that there are some little tricks which you can use in this software, which are going to facilitate your output and all that. And then we have other programs which are also going to be coming up, and we're going to encourage all of you to also, you know, be involved in them and participate actively. So, Mr. Tamon, I don't have anything again to say, except there's a question from the forum. If there's no question, I see I have Jerry, Bhutani, Nelson, Perez, Rodrigo. Send me a message on WhatsApp with your emails, like Mr. Tamon have said. And we are going to set up something special for all of you who have stuck to the end of this session. So tomorrow, keep sharing this opportunity with your colleagues and your friends. And yes, just try to make them to also get to come in and they have the knowledge. And because this is an opportunity that we are really trying to implement, it's a program which we are trying to implement here in Cameroon with the help of the Data Institute. And actually, what you are going to be getting here is not something that you can get anywhere here in Cameroon or in Africa as a whole. It's not. So we're really trying to bring together some minds that are really serious, and we try to bring them up so that they can also really be, you know, have the skills to, you know, implement not only what is important as far as what we're doing over here in Cameroon is concerned, but it can also match up with what is happening in the world as far as engineering, architecture, and all that is concerned too. So I just want to thank everyone for attending, who has attended today, and I hope to see you all tomorrow, same time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wahilari. Thank you all for joining us today, and see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye for now.